It's time for my final 2025 SEC Power Rankings. In gray, you'll see what my preseason power ranking was for reference. We'll start with Arkansas. They just ended up having the worst defense in the SEC by a long shot, and it really cost them and wasted what was a phenomenal season by Taylen Green in this offense. Despite being a preseason top 10 team for a lot of people, South Carolina had some terminal flaws that really threw their season away. I was a little bit lower than the national consensus, but they're still disappointing either way. Florida's kind of in the same boat, with most people thinking they would take a playoff spot, me being a little bit more skeptical about them, but still being too high. Kentucky was well on their way to being at the very bottom of this list until a late surge in the season. Still, they weren't very good this year. They didn't have many redeeming qualities. This will always be a season of what-ifs for Mississippi State. So many close games that they ended up on the wrong end of. Still, it was a nice surprise to see them get off the mat and not be the last place team they were supposed to be. Auburn actually had a really good team this year, but quarterback play severely cost them in an offense that just could not move the football. LSU made strides defensively this season that briefly made them a serious team, but ironically what failed them in the end was their offense this season, making them fall well short of my expectations. There were a lot of people disappointed by what Tennessee did this season, but if you looked on paper, I always thought this was going to be a transition year for them. The same can be said about Missouri, who's another well-coached team that didn't necessarily have the firepower this year to rise to the ranks of contention. Vanderbilt just ended up having a spectacular season that was pretty much unfathomable. I don't know if I saw a single person have Vanderbilt higher than 10th in their preseason power ranking. I had them all the way down at 14th. Obviously, they were incredible this year. With Oklahoma's high floor on defense and their upside offensively, I thought they could be a playoff team this year, despite the really difficult schedule, and it turns out I was right. They made the CFP. Despite a pretty strong finish to the season, this was a disappointing year for Texas. This team had national title aspirations, and they just couldn't quite achieve them for a number of reasons throughout the year. Alabama ended up being the most bipolar team in college football this season, but I stand by the fact that I picked them to win the SEC. They ended up making the SEC title game. Yes, they ended up getting clobbered there, but there's a lot of scenarios where things could have been different. There were a lot of people that lost faith on Texas A&M this year. Their preseason projection was to finish 8th in the SEC behind some trendy teams like Florida and South Carolina. I didn't waver on them. I was confident in Elko in year 2, and it ended up being justified. 2025 was another masterclass coaching job by Kirby. In an era where a lot of his advantages he had before in being able to stack up talent have gone away, he still managed to field incredible teams, and they won the SEC this year. But number one in my final SEC power rankings is the Ole Miss Rebels. They made it further in the CFP than any SEC team. They stopped Georgia in their tracks, and I know looking at the fact that I had them 11 might seem egregious based on what ended up happening, but there weren't that many people super high on Ole Miss. They were 7th in the preseason SEC poll. They were a team that had an over-under win total of 8.5 wins, so the fact that they did as much as they did is extremely impressive stuff.